and it comes down to this is the central doctrine of humanism is human self-perfectibility, right?
Mhm.
That's really what it all comes down to is that it's human beings, we have dethroned God and we have put ourselves on the throne as little g gods of human self-perfectibility, and that we're going to create our own better version of ourselves through technology. That's really what this is all about. And
Exactly.
then we'll destroy everything in that process.
Oh, and it's very cult-like. I mean, I've interviewed people involved in this, and they come on like with the glassy eyes, like, oh, they're looking at the future. And it was a lot of it was started at MIT by Ray Kurzweil, who was a brilliant scientist. He, in the 1980s, invented the talking book, which is he did it for Stevie Wonder. You put a book in and it reads it for you.
Okay.
But then he kind of started to go off the deep end with this stuff about this new bionics and this epigenetics, and we're going to implant computer chips into people so they can monitor all aspects of their health and their brain and their thinking and their consciousness. And they're talking about creating like a Superman. It's kind of like the Ubermensch, the perfect.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, like perfect cosmic consciousness. They could live to be 200.
This is Nietzscheism being implemented before our eyes. And what they're merging the three sciences of genetics, robotics, and artificial intelligence. And they're essentially, as they grow and develop as in terms of technological sophistication, they're being integrated together at the same time. And so the idea is that they're going to produce a superior form of humanity that's no longer Homo sapien. It's going to be something else. And we will be our own gods with the power to create new life. And that's the attack on the tree of life itself. So we've now gone back to the most fundamental of the steps of creation in that process. There's nothing left after that. Once you take away the barrier between the kinds, there's nothing left, right?
That's right. Everything becomes an amorphous. I mean, it's the ultimate blurring of the borders, and the Torah is filled with borders. Yeah. God separates the profane from the holy. He separates, the nations at the Tower of Babel. He separates his very defined separations, and the Talmud gets into, I think, almost too intricate a, detail on this. They separate the top of a pin. However, the intention is to try to understand, I think, the Torah and what it means and how to live with it, especially when you're in diaspora in that case. But getting back to the transhumanism, I mean, in some cases, we are talking about good science here. The problem is it's in the hands of people who don't have the right intentions. Like, for example, the genomic map. I don't know if you know about this, but it's basically an ability to take a look at the human genome so we can determine if a person has a potential to get various diseases or maladies. There's nothing wrong with that on the surface.
Science doesn't kill people.
Enter that into a data bank for the government to run it, and then they can decide things like whether you're going to be allowed to have children, whether or not you're going to be allowed to be married. I mean, there was actually something about this on 60 Minutes the other night where they showed this Harvard scientist, a brilliant man, but yet you could see that they're moving us in the direction of this idea that we can create this perfect health and by understanding your genome. And, you're going to give up your sovereignty. They're going to basically, if you have some propensity for disease, you're going to be killed off.
Science fiction has really painted the picture of where we're going with this. Science fiction is always sort of a substantial part of science fiction has always been looking slightly ahead in
it's a projection. Yep.
Yeah, and but now it's catching up very rapidly, and what is our response? Our response should be to challenge everyone to conserve the natural order, the conservation movement, right? This is where I believe that we can even ally with a portion of the progressive movement that's based in environmentalism. The environmentalists share a natural law perspective that even they should be able to be drawn into a coalition in defense of the natural order. And we should be doing that immediately and as vigorously as possible.
Right. Environmentalism, but also localism. And,
Right.
The idea that, we want to retain, local sovereignty over our lives as much as possible. And I mean, this is a movement that I'm a supporter of. And I tend to be a bit on the green side when it comes to the environment.
No, I am too. I'm very much aligned with you on that. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, all this whole thing, that the natural life movement really began when I was in Santa Rosa, and I was the Eagle Forum state director there, was a Mormon lady, and she was trying to stop Diversity Day from being expanded to Diversity Week at Santa Rosa High School. And so she organized a bunch of parents to go into the school for the day, and I joined them. And then she set up this evening event where Scott Lively is going to sort of give the history of the LGBT movement to the community, right? The history and the tactics and strategy. But when we got to the room, the gays and the hard left had taken over the meeting facility, and all the seats were filled with high school kids and college kids and the purple hair people. And so I walked in, and I just, my heart kind of sunk, and I thought, Lord, what can I do to make a connection? And then instantly in my mind, I got up and I said, look, I think I assume that most people in this room are environmentalists. Well, I am too. And the thing that we hold in common is environmentalism has a natural law perspective that when you are concepts like biodiversity and ecosystems, they assume a natural order that needs to be preserved to protect plants and animals. I'm just asking you to expand your mind a little bit to recognize that humanity has its own ecosystem called the natural family. And if you take the mom or the dad out of the family, you're going to have the same problems if you cut down half the rainforest. And when I said that, this kid in the third row, college kid, he's like this, he's going, oh, and I knew that was it.
You hit the nail. Yeah. and also just to,
that's what the natural life movement has come down to, is developed from. Is that?
Yeah. And also with the natural rights, I mean, just to follow up a little bit on the genomic map, I think that it's safe to say that we also support life. And that if you have a genomic map telling you who's going to live and who's going to die, and Obamacare, which gives you a Corey score to decide whether or not you get health care, every moment we have a moral obligation to help people live as long as possible. And if someone might have a genetic, abnormality, that person can contribute enormously to society. I mean, you can have can you imagine they're going to abort someone who might be mildly retarded and this kind of thing? How immoral is that? That person could grow up and become like Mozart, playing piano or something. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I agree. Now, if you were talking about editing chromosomes or something in the egg or the sperm, that would be one thing, right? Because then you're dealing with potential life and not actual life. But when you're messing around with a created being that's already growing, whose DNA is already established and will never change over the course of the entire progression of his life, that's a completely different phenomenon. That's really is murder. When you're
they're actually encouraging people to have abortions if they have if the fetus isn't perfect, and this is something that's going on. I mean, this is like
it's already doing that sort of thing. They do that now. They do that out as a matter of course.
Oh, they do. I mean, they wanted when my wife and I my wife was pregnant. We were like, we don't want to know. We're having a baby.
We'll take whatever we get and be happy.
Yeah, I mean, this is insane. What the heck? Anyway, so Scott, this is a great talk. I'd like to do more of them with you. It's really very interesting. We're getting onto some good stuff here. But I don't want to go too long. So let my listeners and viewers know how they can reach you, where they can go to watch your YouTube channel and whatever other information you want to impart.
Well, my hub is scottlively.net. And if you go there, you can contact me. My email. There are some of my current videos are there. You can go right to the YouTube channel from those links. But the best place is to connect with me through email through scottlively.net. And I communicate, I correspond with people all over the world on a regular basis, and I love talking these kinds of issues with anybody. So,
all right, Scott. Listen, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks, Chuck. God bless you.
Thank you. Same to you, and talk to you soon.